Good afternoon, students. Are we ready for the consumer's equilibrium by ordinal utility analysis? Right? So, we have already done the indifference curve, indifference map, and the budget line. Right? Now, these are the tools which the ordinal utility analysis uses to explain the consumer's equilibrium. Okay, so consumer's equilibrium definition remains same, that a consumer is in equilibrium when he has attained the maximum satisfaction from his given expenditure. Right? Now, the first thing that we write is about what is consumer equilibrium, and the second thing that we write here is that for the consumer to be in equilibrium, there are two conditions that need to be met. Now, the condition one is, so the conditions of equilibrium, condition one is that the slope of IC, right? Now, what is slope of IC? The slope of IC is equal to MRSXY, which is equal to MUX upon MUY. So, the slope of IC, which is MRSXY, is equal to MUX upon MUY is equal to PX upon PY is equal to slope of budget line, right? The slope of IC, which is nothing but MRSXY, which is equal to MUX upon MUY. So this is MUX upon MUY is actually the formula for MRSXY, right? So don't get confused that from where does this come. So MRSXY is measured as MUX upon MUY. So slope of IC is equal to MRSXY, which is equal to MUX upon MUY is equal to PX upon PY is equal to slope of budget line. Now this PX upon PY we know is marginal rate of exchange. So you can even incorporate that here. So this is the very first condition that needs to be satisfied. Now, what does this condition mean? Where will the slope of IC be equal to the slope of budget line? So this is basically, so the first condition can also be translated as that the first condition of equilibrium is where the budget line is tangent to an IC, an indifference curve in the given IC map, right? So this is what this particular condition mean. When will the slope of two curves be equal? If it is one is a linear curve and another is a non-linear curve. Now here the non-linear curve is IC and the linear curve is budget line. So when will the slope of the two would be equal? The slope of two would be equal when one is tangent to another. So where budget line is tangent to the indifference curve, right? So good, that is the first condition of equilibrium. But now this is not the sufficient condition. This is the first essential condition. Now comes the sufficient condition which needs to be fulfilled with this condition for the consumer to be in equilibrium. So the second condition is at the point of tangency between budget line and IC is convex to origin. This is the condition important for the equilibrium to be attained, right? The first one is essential, The second one is the sufficient condition. It has to suffice. Now, what this condition means, how we can translate this condition? This condition means nothing but diminishing MRS. Right? See, we have said that IC needs to be convex to origin. Now, convexity of IC comes from this property, from diminishing MRS. So, the second condition is translated as diminishing MRS. It should, the marginal rate of substitution XY should be diminishing. Okay, so once we have given the what is the consumer's equilibrium, then second we give these two conditions, right? And then we come to the explanation with the help of the diagram. So in the explanation we say that, suppose, okay, I'll come that side so that it is easy for me to draw. So given the indifference map to a consumer, right? So here is our indifference map. This is IC1. Then we have, okay, I do something. I do a trick. Wait, let me do a trick. So here is IC1. Then here is IC2, and here is IC3, IC4, and so on. Okay, fine. So we'll say that given the indifference map, the consumer will always prefer to consume any combinations which are lying on IC4 because of the property higher IC gives higher level of satisfaction. Because of this property, a rational consumer will always prefer to consume any of the combinations which are lying on the higher indifference curve. But the consumer is restricted by his budget. Right? He has a limited income and the prices of the goods are given. So there is a restraint on the consumer which is given to us by the budget line. So now suppose our budget line is here. So this is our budget line, BL. Okay. Now see, what happens is that all these combinations may be L, M, not L because L we have taken here, M, N, O, P, Q, R, right? All these combinations will be unattainable by the consumer. So there is no reason that we think about the consumer equilibrium falling on any of these combinations. Of course, the consumer will have a higher satisfaction on these combinations than what he get on these IC1 and IC2. But the thing is that he cannot afford to have these combinations. So these are out of the consumer equilibrium, right? So what I told you in the budget line, that the consumer equilibrium now will have to be analyzed keeping in mind the budget line. So let's see. Okay, so there is this combination. Let's name it as C. There is this combination. Let's name it as E. And there is this combination. Let's name it as D. Right? And then there are so many other combinations which are lying here, F, G, H, anything, right? Now, here again these combinations are out of the equilibrium range. The reason being that these combinations, though affordable, the consumer is not spending his entire income. And to be in equilibrium, the condition is that he spends his entire income. Okay, so again these combinations now are out of the equilibrium analysis. So then what are we left with? We are left with all the combinations which are lying on the budget line. Okay, now let's see. There are two ways to explain, and I am going to explain you both. You need to write both. Okay, first, the very first thing, logic that we see here is that C, E and D, if we see these combinations, then the consumer is at equilibrium at point E, at combination E, because that is the combination on the highest indifference curve that could be reached given the budget restraint of the consumer. Both C and D combination, though affordable, where the entire income is spent, they are lying on a lower indifference curve and hence will not give consumer the maximum satisfaction. E will be the level of consumption or the combination which gives him the maximum satisfaction. So that is one explanation. Now coming to the second explanation with the two conditions in mind, right? And what were those two conditions? The two conditions were MUX upon MUY is equal to PX upon PY. Now children, if you see just a little close observation, you can translate this equation into MUX upon PX. Now cross here. I say cross jayega, right? So if this goes as this cross here, MUY goes up, यहाँ पे ये ऐसे. So MUX upon PX is equal to MUY upon PY. This can be done here, right? Isn't it? So, okay, now let's see what happens here. Now, if I draw a tangent to IC1 at point C, let's draw a tangent. I use a different color pen. So here is the tangent. I hope this color works. Yes. Now see, this blue line is steeper than the budget line. The budget line is given in red and the tangent to the indifference curve 1 at point C is given to us by the blue line, which means the blue line is steeper than the budget line, which means at this point, I'm writing it here, at this point the slope of IC, that is MUX upon MUY, is greater than PX upon PY. That is the slope of budget line, right? MUX upon MUY is greater than PX upon PY, which means that the slope of the IC is greater than the slope of the budget line. It also means that the marginal utility of X is greater than what the consumer is paying for X, right? As the result, it can be translated like this also, because, right? So for this disequilibrium condition to go back to the equilibrium, the consumer will have to start moving down on the budget line. He will have to start moving down on the budget line. So when he starts moving down on the budget line, what happens is the consumption of Y decreases and consumption of X is increasing. As the result, the MUX starts falling while MUY is rising and PX and PY are constant. So he continues this downward movement on the budget line till a level is reached where MUX has fallen and MUY has risen to the extent that mu x upon mu y is equal to px upon py, which will be point E. Now consider the point D. If we draw a tangent to find out the slope of IC1 at point D, then what do we see? Here is the tangent drawn to D. Now here if you see, this tangent has a flatter slope than the budget line, right? That means we can safely write that at this point, mu x upon mu y is less than px upon py. That means the consumer is getting lesser satisfaction from the consumption of X than the price that he is paying. Or the otherwise, if you can even talk about Y, that his Y is like he can, from Y, his satisfaction is more than what he is paying for Y, right? So opposite would work. Now, to go back at equilibrium, what he has to do? He has to reduce mu-y and he has to increase mu-x. Only then this sign can convert into equal. So what will he do? He will start an upward movement on the budget line. And this upward movement on the budget line would mean that the consumption of X is reduced while the consumption of Y is increased to the extent that the mu-x upon mu-y becomes equal to px upon py. That will be again the combination E, right? Now coming to E. Now at this point we see that if I try drawing a tangent to the point E, then it will coincide with the budget line. It's coinciding with the budget line. That means at point E, the budget line is tangent to the indifference curve, which means at this point, mu-x upon mu-y is equal to px upon py. Right? So, this is the first condition that is being satisfied. And also the second condition, if we see that at point E, the indifference curve is convex to origin. That is, at point E, there is diminishing marginal rate of substitution. So at point E, both the conditions of equilibrium are fulfilled and hence point E stays as the consumer's equilibrium. I hope you gain from this. I hope this was a good experience. Do give me the feedback, and also the doubts need to be discussed. We can discuss them during the doubt clearing. We can discuss them on phone with the respective teachers. You can call me, you can call Mahua ma'am, you can call Manasvi ma'am.